All right, all right, all right. You're listening to the We're Talking Football podcast. I'm Weston. With me, as always, the right hand man, Lou. Lou, a pleasure to be back on the horn. I know when we last chatted, it was kind of a preemptive or preamble, if you will, going into the draft. The draft has come and gone. I have added another member to the Smith stable in that time. Uh, but nonetheless, we are here. We're going to recap the draft the way that we recap things, right? So when we talk about the entire NFL, we're going to look a little bit into like who did well, who did not so well, what were some of the question marks, and of course, we'll always take the opportunity to sprinkle in a little context around our individual teams, the Los Angeles Chargers and the San Francisco 49ers. We appreciate you tuning in to the We're Talking Football podcast. All right. So
last time we talked, Weston, we did our live, not live, we did our on-site mock draft.
we did do our on-site mock draft from your beautifully renovated basement. I still appreciate you having me as a guest in the home where we can hang and chill. And I expect to be back in the lounge sooner rather than later around some good subject matter. Not that tonight's not good subject matter, just not in the cards to hop out of the house with a 10-day-old baby in the house.
Man, you've changed since you had your second kid, bro.
Dude, I feel like I've aged 10 years, man.
I
am more grumpy.
I didn't want to say
it. Might be that lack of sleep, Who knows? No, but we're here, Lou. When I think about like, this was a really weird draft for me. It's been a long time since like the 49ers from my chair just didn't have, like, I know the previous year we didn't have a pick in the first round, but we at least had our second rounder. This year we didn't have our first rounder, our second rounder, our third rounder, right? Our picks in the third round were compensatory picks, so they might as well be at the top of the fourth, even though they're labeled in as the. So I felt like I was watching in a little bit of a daze because it just felt so long. Like I felt like literally like I was a kid, 10 years old, and it's August, and I'm making my Christmas list.
Let me actually,
I gotta wait forever.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask you this. Let me ask you this. Was this probably one of the least interested drafts you've been a part of, the recent history? The reason why I'm asking that is because I don't know how I would feel if I didn't have a first or second round draft pick. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like I wouldn't be as interested, following the draft. So is that fair to say, or no? Is it your like love of the draft would overcome something like that?
I think my love of the draft helped overcome, and I don't want to say least interesting. Yes, it was harder to pay attention because
I'd be like fucking like McScrooge or something like humbug. I don't give a shit about these players. Fuck them, like type stuff.
For me, it was more about, and I know this is like good problems to have. It's just like, okay,
is this a humble brag?
Let me observe on who's playing catch up, right? Like to the team, who's going to improve.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, we will talk about that because it did happen. So I would not say the least interesting. I would say the most frustrating. And frustrating.
Welcome.
Because just more because it's like you there's talent there. It's coming off the board, right? And
you're like, maybe he will.
Your team
like
can
maybe
really
Nolan
do.
Smith would slip to the 99th pick.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like you knew it, right? And you're like, that guy would have been a good fit. But I say on the flip side of that, and I was actually talking to Jason Aponte about this last night, was just like, I never really teased myself with that. Like if you went to like Daniel Jeremiah's like top 100, right? Like, we don't pick in those picks, right? So like you got to move on, right? So you're looking at the back half, which made it a little bit harder to like go find the talent because it's not like the low hanging fruit where you feel like you're going to be picking in the first 30 names.
And I agree. And the problem with this, I've said this since the beginning, since the start of this process. You can check the receipts and what have you. This wasn't a good draft. I felt it was extremely top heavy, right? So that probably is a little disheartening too, because here you are, you don't pick him within the top 100, and there's not a lot of talent, in my opinion. Some of the talent it went off the board real quick. I did not think it was a deep draft. I did not think it was a good draft. I've been saying this, so that could be extremely add to the disheartening too.
I think it's the beauties in the eye of the beholder, right? Like if I'm a struggling team that's at the bottom of the league,
yeah, I mean,
to me, there's very few needle movers, right? Like guys that just like one or two guys changes your outlook going into the year. For good teams, playoff teams, borderline playoff teams, there was pieces to be had that could make that team better, right?
They dried up real quick though.
They did, man. They did. You know what's funny is, and we'll talk about this, I don't want to give it away, but like I felt like a lot of teams had a really good back half of the draft, even some that struggled with like the more quote unquote obvious picks, right?
Yeah.
But we'll talk about that. Let's not just give it away. So, on that subject, Lou, you tell me, man, who do you think had the best overall? What team do you think had the best overall draft?
I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to answer that question. I plead the fifth because it's for me.
You're not going to.
Not answering that. It's a bullshit question. Doing my best my cousin Vinny type of thing. No, because you know who the answers are in the usual suspects. It's the Colts, it's the Eagles, the Steelers, and the Seahawks. Like I get that, and yes, but what I'm going to do as a part of an apology from my last time we aired on our mock draft is going to give you a really sneaky good draft that I feel like is not being talked about enough. Okay. All right, and that team resides in the NFC East. No, it's not the Philadelphia Bulldogs. It's the New York Football Giants. The New York Football Giants have one of the sneakiest, really good drafts this past week. Look at the players they got. They got Deonte Banks, cornerback out of Maryland. He has good size, good speed. He's uber physical man cornerback, right? He's going to fit perfectly in that Wink Martindale system. He's aggressive at the line of scrimmage with his jams. He's always in the hip pocket of wide receivers. That is like a Wink Martindale cornerback to a T. Fantastic job of pairing that up with him. Then you look at their second-round pick, John Michael Schmitz, center out of Minnesota. Weston, do you remember my little tirade I went in our mock draft? This is why I'm apologizing to Giants fans here. I said he would have warranted a first-round selection, right? I think he addresses a huge area of need and weakness on that interior offensive line of the New York Giants, right? He's going to be safe, reliable, ho-hum player. My notes here I have, he does a good job with reaching interior defensive linemen. He gets to the next level really well. He's going to settle that interior offensive lineman of the New York Giants. Then, in addition, they added Jalen Hyatt, wide receiver at Tennessee. An extremely popular name. He torched Alabama with his speed. He has good, really good height. When Giants fans, I want you to think of Will Fuller, but with better hands, right? Will Fuller was a first-round selection. It was a
bigger
reach.
Body too. He's a bigger body than Will.
Well, man, very similar.
He's thicker, and it just looks thicker. So I'm saying this for like durability purposes, because what was the knock on Will Fuller? It was never really the skill. It was the availability. It was the availability. He was just never available.
But like he's a home run hitter, and I think it did a great job because when we first started doing this podcast, Weston, I talked about where Daniel Jones really succeeded in his career. It was with the deep ball. That's why I praised the Kenny Galladay signing, because I'm like, that is something I think would translate well. He was a deep ball wide receiver. Last but not least, we'll talk about Eric Gray, the running back out of Oklahoma. Obviously, absolutely love this selection. I talked about him on my show where because I was saying that he could be a Tony Pollard type for the LA Chargers, right? But he's experienced in zone blocking scheme. He can identify and burst through the holes really quick. He's a 3-down running back that can catch. He's a pretty good, willing pass protector. This is so important, I feel like, because he's going to bring some confidence in the Giants' backfield with Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley is a stud, right?
Yep.
But the knock on him is he can't stay on the field. He gets nicked up. And that's his injury history is his biggest flaw. So this will bring someone in to help maybe lessen the burden off of Barkley. So I love the New York Giants what they did in this year's draft. They built around Daniel Jones, man.
Yeah, and they made the investment into the quarterback. They're building around him. You and I both in our mock draft, we had Deonte Banks going a little bit higher than 24 overall. So solid value pick there at a position of need, right? It's not often those things. And then you double down with Michael Schmitz, right? And same thing. It's a position of need, great value, where a lot of people talked about this guy being in the first round, and you get him 57 overall, right? The back half of the second round. The Jalen Hyatt, another person who multiple times has been mocked as a receiver that was going in the first round, and you pull him in the back half of the third round, right? So like they got value, and they got value at positions of need. I was talking to my brother, diehard Giant fan, obviously. And we're talking about Jalen Hyatt, and I'm a Tennessee Vols guy, right? So like I've watched a lot of Vols football. For Hyatt, he is a one-trick pony, dude. This is good. He's not a polished route runner. He's not a possession wide receiver. He played with a quarterback with a big arm. Hendon Hooker had a big arm, can stretch the defense, and
but you're getting him in the back of the third round, though. It's not
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like, if this is a first round, I think teams kind of caught on to this. Like, wait a minute, like this guy can't go in the first round, but in the back of the third round, you take that all day. And what was I talking about before we even jumped on? My philosophy. I mentioned this last night. There are 3 positions I think you should always be addressing no matter what your football team is and what state you're in. It's defensive back, specifically corner, edge, quarterbacks, right? So when I look at G-men here, not even taking into account undrafted free agents, just who they drafted, I see 3 picks in the defensive backfield. I see a safety from Houston. I see a DB from Old Dominion, and I see Deonte Banks. An area of need, young talent. I wasn't thinking them under. I was thinking them under good draft, not sneaky good. But I like this perspective that you have because it's one that's hard to argue, man. They did very well for themselves, and I would say my brother is like you and I. We're hypercritical, right? Like of our teams, he is hypercritical of his Giants, and he walked away relatively satisfied.
It's weird, Beans, right? It's weird. Yeah, that happens every now and then. What about you? Who'd you think?
Oh man, listen, the low hanging fruit's the most obvious, right? I thought Philadelphia, and I'm not here to continue the blow train on fucking Howie Roseman.
Cut the balls.
Yeah, but he's doing it well, and then on top of making trades, right, doing the draft and bringing in a former first round pick added to your running back stable. I thought Seattle did really well.
Yeah, these are the teams that are your biggest competition in the NFC. Can I tell you something real quick before you keep on looking like who else you thought well?
I got my pick, but
okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so real quick. So you know what I noticed watching this draft? The NFC and the AFC build their teams completely different. The NFC is like more of like your old school bully ball type of thing, type of the way they formulate their roster, right? A lot of like physicality, to that team. The AFC is all about that high flying
finesse.
Yeah, exactly. But like that explosiveness, complete opposite. I feel like the way they build their teams. That was just my opinion, like something I felt like I noticed. But and also the AFC once again stockpiling with the top quarterbacks. With all young, it's going to be so competitive, the AFC, because of those quarterbacks.
This one might surprise you. So I'll use your political stance. I think the best drafts belong to those teams we just mentioned. I think it's the Philadelphia Eagles, Seattle Seahawks, Pittsburgh Steelers. In my opinion, I think those 3 did the best for themselves. That's my opinion. If I was labeling sneaky good, you went NFC East. I'm going to go AFC East, and I'm going to go with Pakika Nahavid Yad, the New England Patriots.
Really?
All right, talk to me. I really like a lot of what they did here. Christian Gonzalez first, 17 overall, right? For a long time, consensus like, hey, this guy's probably going to be the first corner off the board, right? Big, physical, fast,
Yeah.
corner. I'm using physical loosely, right? Like
Yeah.
he's not afraid to bump and run with you. I'm not saying he's going to come up and make the tackle. A good press man kind of just fits what the Belichick, like when their defense has been the most successful, they've had at least one of those guys on the outside that can do that. Now they might have two, and I think this was gift wrapped at 17 overall. Gift wrapped. I remember sitting on your couch or sitting watching this and like literally looking at my wife and being like, I'm going to tell you who's being picked right now because there's just no way Bill Belichick is passing on a guy like that. He's had too much success with guys like this. One of those just like I think he fits the Patriot way, right? He was originally in Colorado. When coaching changes, he followed his DB coach back to Oregon, right? Like I think he just buys in, just feels like a quintessential New England Patriot, and I think he's going to fit well there and like not a bad consolation prize at 17 overall.
Mm-hmm.
The other guy, Keon White, the
Yes.
defensive end from Georgia Tech. I mean, dude, to me, the tape he just stands out on. And I don't know if you saw like an interview with him, but he was pissed that he had 46 overall. And I feel like great. Like, the Patriots are going to add somebody with a chip on their shoulder. Now, the one that might be surprising that I just really like is their third round pick is Marte Mapu. Most people aren't going to know a lot about a guy that came from Sacramento State. I just happen to follow a team that a lot of the people who cover the team live in the Bay Area and are familiar with Sacramento State. And Steph Sanchez put out great tape and interviewed Marte Mapu, right? Like he was kind of one of those combine snubs and things of that. Like he just worked out well. And he's, some of these, he just, again, another guy that's just going to show up, play the game, go get, go find space, go make plays, go make tackles, and just a slept on guy, which has been the Patriot way for a long time. Do I love the kicker in the fourth round? No, but
I
shit,
know how
my
you
team
feel
took
about
one in the
kickers.
third round. So like it looks better, and arguably maybe the best kicker they got, Ryland versus Moody, in my opinion. I love the Mafi pick from the guard from UCLA. And
Yeah, he's
the one that
powerful. Yeah.
that really kind of puts this over the top for me, and I don't know why, is their 187th overall pick, the wide receiver from LSU, Keyshawn Boutte. I just like the guy. I like his tape. I know it's inconsistent, but he shows really good. He had a better 21 than he had 22. And to me, it just feels like a good player at a team that has struggled to produce wide receivers as of late and has had some big swings and misses and late first, early second round wide receiver talent. I think this guy can play. And you know what? They made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 total picks. They probably have about 4 or 5 guys that are going to buy it for a starting opportunity this season. That's a good draft. That's a
Yeah.
solid draft.
I agree. It's interesting how like I feel like you wouldn't have categorized the Giants as a great draft. It's so funny. I also wouldn't categorize the Patriots either. But when you put it like everything you just said right there, I guess I gotta go look back at their draft. It's just that those are some, especially those first two picks. They fit that Patriots defense to a fucking T, man. So they're perfect fits.
What were you saying before? When you pick in your picks rounds 1 through 3, you need to find starters.
Yeah, and they did.
I think they found 3 in 3 picks, right? Like I think they did. And that's tough to argue, right? That's going out and doing your job, right? And getting players that, the Patriots have always done well with finding people that are going to do it their way, even the players that have had run-ins and issues, and I'll leave names out of it to not sully anybody's name or reputation. When they were in the building, man, and they bought in. They've done a really good job of finding those people.
Can I also add one more real quick? That was I feel like not getting enough limelight. The Arizona Cardinals, I thought, had a fantastic draft because it did I thought it did an amazing job of it was a perfect blend of obtaining solid players and future draft capital, right? So First, let's talk about the players they got. They got, in my opinion, the best offensive tackle, in the draft. I'm really high on Paris Johnson Jr. Can't go wrong with selecting an offensive lineman, offensive tackle, that early in the draft. You're paying him really cheap. He's going to be solid, and he plays one of the most important positions, in the game. They followed it up with getting B.J. Ojulari, edge from LSU. This guy has fantastic get off the line of scrimmage, amazing bend to him, dipping under. I think that is not being really promoted how important that was. I was hoping he would fall to the Chargers because he is a great edge rusher, in my opinion. Just, it's in his blood. His brother plays for the Giants. They are fantastic players. And last but not least, Garrett Williams, cornerback. Once again, you always having to address the secondary. That's something you believe in. But Garrett Williams, he's quick. He has good instincts. He was very productive in college. He had 2 sacks and 4 interceptions. But once again, I just liked the players they got. They are high floor players, and Ojulari is actually a high ceiling player. So they did a great job of that. In addition, so we talked about the players I liked. Let's hear about the draft picks they got for next year's draft. I feel like they're assuring themselves the first round pick next year. The first pick overall next year. They got the Texans first and third. And let's talk about that. The Texans, I know they're improved, but they're still not going to be a great team.
Yeah.
That is most likely probably a top 10 pick, I think, next year's draft. And let's face it, the Cardinals are not going to have a great year either. So that's two in the top 10. So I feel like they're assuring themselves they're going to be able to move up, to the first overall pick. They got the Titans third. Whatever I just said about the Texans, same thing about the Titans. Titans, they're not going to be. That's going to be they're going to have an early draft selection for the mere fact, they have a depleted roster. So they got future draft capital from teams that are going to be mediocre to bad, which is really imperative. And then they got the Eagles' 5th round pick too, just to add a little cherry on top.
Yeah,
so solid players, good draft picks.
The other pick I like for them is the wide receiver from Stanford, Michael Wilson. The knock on him, good player. I mean, all the intangibles, right? Like 6'2" and change, 215, 220 pounds, long arms, but injuries, right? Availability is the best ability. So college, career wasn't highly productive because he missed time in 20. He missed time, at the end of 2022. I think he went a little earlier, but I understand the selection, right? I mean, listen, he went round 3, like literally the back, back half of round 3. So, 4 to 5 range on him. Like, go get your guy. No big deal. I'm not going to do a second one because I would talk more about like the Eagles or the Seahawks or
we've heard that ad nauseum. I wanted to bring a different perspective.
Yeah, totally, and I don't disagree with the Cardinals. So let's do the complete opposite. Where'd the worst draft come from?
Once again, that's also low-hanging fruit, so I will not be answering that either. What I will say, though, I'm going to give you a sneaky...
These are your questions, bro. You can't refuse to answer them.
I'm gonna sneaky bad draft, like sneaky worst draft. All right. Once again, thinking outside the box here. I am going to get crucified for this, but the Houston Texans, I think, had a really bad draft. And let me tell you why. Like, what? They got 2 of the most important positions in the in the draft, quarterback and edge. All right. Yeah. First of all, I don't know how much of a believer I am in Stroud. Not saying he's going to be awful, but I don't know if he's that, that Messiah-esque type of quarterback, especially in the competition in the AFC. I don't know how much he will improve the quarterback position, but I don't know if I don't have a good feeling he will stay with the big boys like the Trevor Lawrences and the Justin Herberts and what have you, right? So whatever they traded up, to get Will Anderson, that really is the compensation for Stroud. And then they got obviously Will Anderson, great edge player of Alabama. All right, so now why am I so down on this draft? It's because, in my opinion, they did improve their team, but like I kind of said this already, and alluded to this before, they're still going to be a pretty mediocre or bad team because they need such an influx in talent, and they need to rebuild that team. And they gave away up future valuable draft capital that is also, quote unquote, cheap labor as well. And I don't like the fact that they did that. So we're talking about Stroud, and basically the owner wanted Stroud, the coach wanted Will Anderson, so they compromised and tried to get both, and it happened for them. But let me ask you a question, Weston. Would you rather Will Anderson or Will McDonald, Miles Murphy, Lucas Van Ness, or Nolan Smith, and your next year's first and third round picks? For a team like that, they're not one piece away.
Yeah, you're not a player away. You're not a player away. You know
what I'm saying? Like you would take those lesser pass rushers and still have next year's 2 picks.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
And what we've already identified as not the highest caliber of draft.
Come on, I'm telling you, man. I don't like that. I don't like that. I feel like they're being overly aggressive where they needed to do a slow rebuild because the cupboards are bare, bro.
Yeah.
I know it's true. I think I said it's controversial. I'm the only one that probably say, how they did not have a good draft.
No, I mean, listen, here's what I'll applaud the Texans. And I would encourage any football team to consider these sort of things. Like, you just brought in a relatively new general manager with a brand new head coach. They're having conversations where it's like, we need to make a splash. Like, new head coach, we need to make a splash. But I'm not saying that it was the right move. I'm saying that you had the support of the organization to do those sort of things. Like, good on them. Good on them. Maybe just not the right time to pull that trigger in this particular draft. And I will give them this. And this was talked about during the draft for the last, I would say, like 2 weeks heading in, they had every pundit and team thinking that they probably weren't in on a quarterback at that point, that it was going to be Will Anderson at 2, and they still had found a way to get the quarterback and Will Anderson. You'll forget all about this and the moves that they made and what they gave up for next year if Stroud shows some serious promise.
You know what you said, Wes? I'm going to real quick, and then we can get on to yours. Yep. You hit the nail on the head. All right. They have a rookie head coach and a newer, a general manager. And I feel like they made a rookie move, and basically whatever metaphor you want to use, the guy who, going to do it all day, drinking bender, right? And, drinks way too much in the morning or in the early afternoon, doesn't even make it out tonight, or someone goes to the casino, wastes all their money that they had put aside, in the first hour and can't do anything. I felt like they went too much all in this year, not realizing that they need more than what they got.
Yeah. I get where you're coming from. This is hard for me. Like, I don't, listen, the 49ers didn't have a great draft.
Yeah, but that's like low-hanging fruit. I eliminate any team, to be honest with you, Wes. I eliminate any team who didn't have like a first or second round pick. You know what I'm saying? Like,
that's why
I get it.
I want to shit on the Dolphins because even with their picks, I don't know what they were doing.
But Tyreek Hill, you make that argument is one of their picks.
Who just told you he's hanging it up once he hits a certain age too, right?
Yeah,
so
we'll see if the checks clears. I think he can find himself playing for another year. So.
You know what? I hate what the Denver Broncos did. I'm gonna say sneaky bad, not the worst, because I think they saved themselves on day 2 of this draft. But I'm gonna have to say my second favorite team, the Detroit Lions.
I disagree with you.
I did.
Okay, go ahead.
So for me,
I get it.
The Jahmyr Gibbs.
What
do we talk about ad nauseum about running backs, and then there's generational running backs that maybe you consider in the back half.
But if you flip their second round picks for their first round picks, it actually all makes sense.
That's what I'm saying. If you took Sam Porta and Brian Branch in the first round, nobody would have argued it. Sam Laporta and Brian Branch, like, all right. I mean, Jason and I were having this conversation about like with the 49ers tight ends, Braden Willis and the kid from Cameron Latu from, we're like, if you just flipped them, nobody would even complain, right? But you still got the same 2, no matter how the math worked out. I just feel like the Iowa linebacker, huge reach at 18, in my opinion. Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, most people have this guy pegged that just because of his position is, a second rounder, mid-second rounder. So I'm looking at value. I do like Laporta. I do like Branch. I do like the roll of the dice on Hendon Hooker. But I'm just struggling to see the vision for the Detroit Lions and a team that came off so much momentum and so much progress. Then all of a sudden you hit this moment in time and you're like, dude, you got 12 and 18 overall. No, they had 6, right? They traded out, didn't they? I don't know. It for me, just those first two, I'm sour. I'm not sour on the player, Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he's going to be a good football player in the NFL. I'm just looking at it from a pure value perspective at 12 overall. I think they're even I would sit there and make a better argument for go get more defensive help. The problem is not on the offensive side of the ball. When you're picking at 12, there's some defensive players that could have been had, some edge rushers that were still floating around.
Yeah.
It felt lost. It just felt foggy to me.
I just feel like it was non-conventional, and that's what threw people off. What I really don't like is it sucks. I love the player, Campbell, right? But I've been jaded by first-round linebackers for so long now. The hit rate on first-round linebackers in recent drafts have been awful. I mean, like they have come closer to bust than superstars.
Yep.
The difference with Campbell, though, I do feel like he's uber intelligence, where the years past with linebackers, they were uber athletic, and they might have lacked some of that awareness to play one extremely important position. Campbell is not like that, but he's also not. He also has some athleticism. He has a fantastic relative athletic score, but he does have some, that athletic feature to him too, and the intelligence. So maybe that's a pick that we looking back, but like, all right, I get it. We were upset about it, but it might work out. So
it's hard for me because I was going up and down looking at all the picks in this draft, right? And to pick a team that just did the worst, it's hard because every team, in my opinion, made a bad selection at a certain time. But then you look at the rest of the body of the work and you're like, okay, that crosses out that. Okay, that crosses out that. That crosses out that. I think
you hated the
conversation.
I think for you, I think you hated the process or the thought process. Like,
and I think that's
as opposed to the players.
Yeah. And you know what? I think that's the theme that I'm seeing across a lot of these is like I use my own team as an example. I don't mind the position, it's more like the player versus who else is out there or the need of that position being prioritized over the need of other positions when it's like, do you not watch the same? You guys are on the fucking sideline. You're not watching the same game that I'm watching in HD. Like, I don't understand, like it's, I think a lot of people, but it's funny how it worked out, right? Like the 49ers got an undrafted free agent that Mel Kiper literally mocked to them at 99 overall.
Yeah.
And they found him as an undrafted free agent, right?
Yeah.
And then you look at, we just talked about the Lions. Those first 2 picks, you flip them with their 3rd and 4th pick and nobody's saying anything, right? Like everybody's probably like really, it's not often that it works out that way, but it worked out that way for this team. But they were on the brink of, in my opinion, of fucking up all of the momentum that they had from the back half of last year coming into this year.
Yeah. But they saved it. They totally redeemed themselves.
Totally redeemed it. Who do you think is let's just stay in the first 2 rounds. Let's not get crazy here and egregious because although if we did, it would make my job, our job a little bit easier. But stay in the first 2 rounds. You look at the picks from the first 2 rounds. Who feels like the right player went to the right team?
Ooh. I'm going to double down on our previous episodes, our draft coverage, because I do have a couple here. But Anthony Richardson.
Yep.
I was going into this draft confused how to feel about Anthony Richardson. His ceiling is so high, but I'm like, if he gets in the wrong people's hands, I think he could be a huge bust. So like, I felt like if he went to like a team like the Titans or the Raiders, I don't think they had the right support system for him. So when the Colts, drafted him, I thought this was a phenomenal. He's either going to be a bust or a superstar. Your typical boomer bust type of prospect. I think this was the right place for him. Decent offensive line. You got Jonathan Taylor right there to help with the running game. They started to add some weapons. They had Michael Pittman. Love the Joshua Downs selection in the third round. So I really think they did a fantastic, and then also the new coach too, Gannon, who's had success. I'm really just literally repeating what I said in our previous episodes. But he had some success with with Jalen Hurts, who is not as similar as a prospect, but they do have some of the same type of qualities, right?
Yep.
Big, physical, runners, mobile, can throw the ball, just needs a little honing in on accuracy and what have you in decision making. So I think he went to the perfect, and on that turf too, makes him play faster. I think he went to the perfect team.
Yeah. I'm excited to watch him. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just excited to see
So my
how this
prediction,
translates.
yeah, my prediction, I think he's going to have a lot of big splash plays, but I think there's going to be a lot of ugly plays too. I think it's going to be a learning because,
Bro, I don't want to. It's gonna look and feel, I think, in some ways like Lamar Jackson's rookie year, where he just right he played in his rookie year. Or was it his second year? Flacco was still there in his rookie year. I forget. Lamar Jackson's first action, like first full season, he just learned a lot on the fly, but he was athletic enough to still make splash plays, still make up for a botched assignment, a misread. So it's not going to look pretty all the time, but it's going to look flashy, like lightning in a bottle, and it's going to be
he's going to have a lot.
You're going to see a lot of it, dude.
I just was about to say he's going to have a lot of top 10 plays.
Yep.
But you look at the box score, you're like, oh. So, what about you? What about you, Weston?
I was so torn on like which route I really wanted to go. All right. I hate doing this because there's a couple. I think there's a couple teams that got guys that really fit. So for me, I think my favorite and the best fit, which is going to allow this person to make an impact right out of the gate, is going to be Jordan Addison to the Minnesota Vikings.
I have him here too on my list.
Just find this to be, first of all, we know what his production was in Pitt. With Kenny Pickett, and then obviously the transfer to USC last year. Obviously, production dipped a little bit. I think the guy's a star. I think he will be a star in the NFL. And I think what better way to like come out onto the scene, having arguably the best wide receiver or the most productive wide receiver in football playing opposite of you, right? Like, you're going to get some looks. A team that desperately, Adam Thielen's moved on. I don't know if they have the guy who's ready to step in or is capable of stepping in to be the true number two. That's going to keep this offense going. It's hard to argue with his production. It's hard to argue with the fit. And I know we shit all over Kirk Cousins from time and time again, but like, hey, as long as these games aren't on Monday night or Sunday night, or we're not talking about playoff games, like, I expect a lot of production out of Addison. I expect a lot from him. I think he's a plus. I would say like a plus, a number two receiver plus, right? Like a lot of teams might be looking for him as number one.
He's so pro ready.
Oh, dude. He was pro. I don't even know why he went to USC. He should have just came out last year.
He's so pro ready, and I agree with you 100%. Going to that offense that is trying to make a shift from a running team to more of a passing team. So yeah, I think I'd rather not talk about, because I mean, if you tell listeners what my face was when you were talking about this, it's just more like, yep, because he was one of my favorites when it came to the Chargers. I had him as the wide receiver 3. But he was one of my favorite. I was really excited to pair him up with the Chargers, and they passed on him. So, but I'm a believer in Addison.
Honorable mention: Joey Porter Jr. to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like, you can't write that any better than the way that panned out.
Yeah.
That's my honorable mention of a guy that just fits where he's going, not just his lineage, but the pedigree, the physicality, the way he plays football is meant for the black and blue division, specifically on that steel curtain, once upon a time steel curtain defense.
Couldn't agree with you more, man.
All right, what's your biggest head scratcher, man? And I'm still up in the air on this.
I'm not gonna beat a dead horse here and say Jake Moody to the Niners, because it's too soon.
Too soon.
But biggest head scratcher has to be Zach Charbonnet going to the Seattle Seahawks. Loved Charbonnet, love him. A little perplexed why Seattle, when they invested so highly in a previous young running back in Kenneth Walker, who was really successful with Seattle, got hurt a little bit. Okay, yeah, I understand, but really you had to take Zach Charbonnet like that early. I just feel like they could have addressed their interior offensive line with that position, with something that's somewhat of a weakness, right? They could have drafted John Michael Schmitz or Osiris Torrance, anything to be really or try to neutralize that physicality that the division that they play in, i.e., the Niners, right? You need a more physical. You need to match physicality with physicality when you're going against the biggest threat in the division, right? So I get why, because you want to have a competent running back behind Kenneth Walker in case he's hurt. But I feel like they could have waited for other, other running backs deeper in the, later on in the draft. And in addition, they're somewhat similar. It's not like a change of pace running back, or they're both physical, running backs. So I was confused, and I was like, damn, because I like Charbonnet, but he's somewhat redundant for the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah. And on top of it, they went ahead and drafted another in Kenny McIntosh at number 237 overall from Georgia. Good players, you know what I mean, that have played at.
Are they going to run the wing?
I mean, listen, that's how you're going to win the West, right? Like you're going to, although you just got this flashy new toy for your quarterback, right? Like you kind of want to take
once again, Weston, you're killing me with these passive aggressive mention of my favorite wide receivers when the Chargers are on the board.
Dude. Well, you weren't on the board yet.
No, right before.
Went the pick before, right?
Ooh, before.
And you guys had an opportunity, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Mine, I don't know. I don't know if you'll agree with this. It's just how I feel. Is Cowboys pick number 58 overall, tight end out of Michigan, Luke Schoonmaker. I just don't see the fit. I've never really loved. It's been a long time since I've loved like a Michigan tight end coming out, like maybe since like Kyle Brady, right? Like it's been a long time. He's, to me, like, this is why I don't love it, and I don't think it's a fit. It feels forced. I honestly feel like the Cowboys panicked when the Bills traded up over them to take Kincaid. I really believe they were going to probably take Kincaid right there after losing Dalton Schultz, who was highly productive over the last 2 seasons for the Dallas Cowboys. And I think that's the piece that they really wanted to plug in. This, if you're going tight end, fine, but I think there was other ones still there, like he's not a strong blocker. He doesn't do much after the catch. Doesn't do a lot like from a contested catch standpoint. It just felt like this was like their number one they labeled this their number one priority, and they were going to take a swing at it no matter what in the first 2 rounds. And it just felt like they probably could have got better value and a better fit for the position, or what they would expect from the position later in the draft, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think they were a little caught off guard. Pretty much, I feel like they were caught off guard for the fact that the tight end run was interesting. It was one in the end of the first round, and then a boatload in the early second round. And I think they felt like they probably could have got a Musgrove, where they were. And I think it was kind of like a forced pick. I do somewhat agree with you on that.
I just,
I feel like they
I don't
got
know.
caught with their pants down by their ankles, type of thing. Like wow, we really thought there had been more tight ends, but there wasn't.
Yeah, I just, they should have seen it coming that somebody was going to trade up over them, right? Like you got to
I mean,
be.
see it coming. I mean,
They
the whole talk though, like the teams are going to try and trade up ahead of them. It was the Buffalo Bills, the Kansas City Chiefs. It was to get wide receivers though. So maybe in their head, like, oh, the wide receivers are off the board. Maybe they felt a little comfortable. I don't know. Playing conspiracy theorists here, but that's just neither here nor there.
Fun fact for you: the Dallas Cowboys' first 2 picks are both Michigan players. Like, who do they think
They
they
do
are?
they do like their
I know.
Michigan players.
Who do they think they are? The Eagles taking Georgia Bulldogs with their first 2 picks in every
Or,
draft.
or the Chargers taking 3 fucking TCU players, bro.
Yeah, I saw that too. Listen, and I was trying to be like, I was trying to scrutinize like in early rounds, right? Like you can argue like, well, why are you taking this guard when you should have taken a edge in the 5th or 6th round? Like we don't know. We aren't those guys, right? Like we're not these scouts that know. And I hope some people paid attention to some of like the media coverage around the Dallas Cowboys where they literally gave you insight into like the war room discussions that were
I
taking place
love
before they
those.
decided to make the pick, right?
Yeah,
So you understand
I love
who's
those.
in there and who's vocalizing. And I know it differs from team to team in control and whatnot, but like these scouts, bro, this is what they do all year long. And this is their 3 days to shine, right?
Yeah.
Like, and they rely on them. I mean, dude, it was a scout that was like, you're taking
Director, I
my
think it
Mason
is.
Smith, like you're taking this defensive tackle, right?
Well,
And like
Jerry,
McCarthy and Jones are like, all right, all right,
both of them don't know what's going on. That's why it's not
yeah,
Jerry.
yeah.
It's his sons that are really more like in the part.
McCarthy's sitting there like, I can't believe you guys still let me have this job. And
He's like
you
McCarthy's
baby.
like, well, I don't give a shit. We're taking. Well, yeah, I'm not gonna
Yeah,
be here next year anyway.
yeah. I got one more year left on this contract,
And then
baby,
you
and I'm
got Dan
out.
Quinn. And then you got Dan Quinn sitting like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, take that, Mozzie Smith.
that meme where the guy's in the corner behind the tree like this. That's Dan Quinn. Yeah. All right, Lou, real quick, because we're actually doing pretty good on time.
I think we are.
Give me like a minute or two overview on how you think the Chargers did.
All right. Well, real quick. I was pleasantly surprised, and let me tell you why. Even though I might not have agreed with the players 100% that they selected, I do agree with the philosophy what they did in the draft, and not only in the draft in itself, but within each round what I felt like they should have done. So it's not the players I wanted, but they did address the needs that I felt like were extremely pressing. So that being said, I thought it was a pretty sneaky good draft. For the mere fact that, like I said, they literally address their positions of needs. And I know you said on your show yesterday that when you draft for needs, that's a loser mentality. So this is what I'm going to throw in the difference. They drafted for positions of need, but in my opinion, it was one of the best players still on the board. Meaning it wasn't like a huge overreach. That's what she said.
No, the need was a coincidence, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, did I listen? I'm fine with Quentin Johnson. He's going to be good. Quentin Johnson, we talked shit about for the fact that he's the highest ceiling but the lowest floor. But I think he went into a phenomenal situation with the Chargers. Now, tell me if Quentin Johnson was drafted by a team like the Commanders or like the Falcons, I'm like, that's going to be a bust. But Quentin Johnson, I think he went into the right situation. Doesn't have to be the immediate starter. Can learn from 2 savvy vets, and could be almost a forgotten wide receiver, in some of these games and really hone in his game. So like the Quentin Johnson, pick, even though he wasn't my favorite wide receiver, we all know I had a man crush on Zay Flowers, but it was not to be. That being said, I was extremely happy that at least Zay Flowers didn't go to the Chiefs because that was going to be like, then I was going to need some fucking therapy if that happened. But that being said, like I said, liked all the other picks. Not one. I didn't come out. Usually, I come out of the draft. I'm like, this is a 2-player draft for the Chargers. The first 2 rounds, and that's it. Everything else sucked. I didn't get this feeling whatsoever from the Los Angeles Chargers. With this draft, I felt pleasantly like content, and that's a lot from a negative fan of me. So this is like, yeah, this is a huge statement because I'm always looking for. I'm a cynic. I'm always looking for the crack in the armor to expose them. But they did a solid, sound job in a bad draft. You also have to take into consideration, last but not least, where they were drafting each round towards the end.
Yeah.
Right. So for them to get these players, then they weren't home runs, but a single here, a double there, and I'm content.
Listen, I mean, if Quentin Johnson develops right back half of this year, becomes a starter for you into next year, like the draft's a win, right? Like it's about Herbert having some consistent weapons that he can go find. I'm curious your thoughts on, like, I know you're saying, like, I know these are 2 positions of need, but you literally went wide receiver, linebacker, wide receiver, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the way that it went. But you're in your mind, because you have a little bit of an insider track, right, with some people that you chat with. These were the players that were still high up on their board, regardless of position.
Yeah, it really was. It really was. What happened? Well, first of all, getting back to Quentin Johnson, I think this is a prediction. He's gonna. People compare him to Mike Williams. I don't compare him to Mike Williams whatsoever. I think he has a completely different skill set. I have a feeling his career will mimic Mike Williams. And what I mean by that, real quick, is the fact that he's going to be really flashy. He's going to take over some games, and then he might do an Olay act. I think consistency is going to be his major issue. And like I said, he will put up like huge games, but he will, I feel like, be MIA. Now getting back, yeah, these were the players they were still high on their board, and they were, they felt really good about. That's all I really could say in reference to that. So they got need and value. They felt like, so it's double dipping.
Yeah, I thought that. Listen, at the end of the day, I thought they had solid draft. The mere fact that I didn't receive any texts from you that were like suicide watch or come help me, I'm face down drunk in the middle of the street, my wife won't let me in the house because I went
like,
on a
Weston,
yeah.
I'm like, Weston, you're my sponsor, you should be here.
Yeah, like, why are you not here? You're letting me down. I didn't get any of those, so that's a positive sign, because you'd be the first one to send those. And I was checking in on you too. Are we okay with this? Are we all right there?
Yeah,
and like,
exactly.
you're like, I'm okay.
Love to get your reaction on like the Quentin Johnson or any of the other picks. Like when you heard that happen, like what was like your knee-jerk reaction?
My knee-jerk reaction was like, wow,
poor Lou.
Zay Flowers would have been really something here, right?
Yeah.
Or I think it's just my own infatuation. Like, I love the divas, I love the wide receivers, I love the DBs. My initial like I have man crushes on Jordan Addison, on Zay Flowers. Like, these guys are really talented. Like, they're really talented. I love, Smith and Jigba, but like JSN, but like I never thought he'd be around at that point for you guys anyway. So it was just like, wasn't in my mind. I just thought this was an opportunity, but Quentin Johnson makes sense. He's bigger than the other 2 guys. He plays outside, right? Like, I think what he lacked in college, even though he was productive, was just a guy who could get him the ball in the right spots, right? And make those throws. And that's Herbert, right? Like, that's not a knock on, because you guys drafted him, right? Duggan. Like, you guys drafted, but it's not a knock on him. Like, it's the offense that they call, but he's certainly not on the
fantastic point. Fantastic.
It's not on the same tier as Justin Herbert. So there's a lot to be excited about. But dude, you could say the same thing for prospects 1 through 259.
Yeah.
It could go boom, or it can go bust.
He's so polarizing. I can literally see him being like
I think your comparison to Mike Williams'
his career
trajectory is a very fair comparison.
See, in my opinion, he's such a high variance where it's like he can either be Devontae Adams I'm not trying to be like complete like a homer here or whatever.
No, of course not.
If you look at their relative athletic score, they're extremely similar from athletics, how they tested athletically. If you look at their their build and what have you, good run after the catch, can't also be a deep threat. You can line them up anywhere. So yes, that's the excitement. He literally could be Devontae Adams, or he could he could literally be like Rashad Perryman.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? There's absolutely no chance that he'll be in the like it's going to be like it's going to be.
Yeah. So,
but he's in a good position, I think.
I saw a comp that was Alshon Jeffrey.
Oh no, I don't think that at all.
I think if you got Philadelphia Eagles version of Alshon Jeffrey, you'd be very pleased.
Alshon Jeffrey was a different play. He was big and physical. And
here's where this becomes polarizing for you, is because the days of a highly productive number 13, like they're not going to be there forever, right?
But maybe maybe you can elongate his career a little more.
Maybe
he's not on the field as much.
How much longer is Mike Williams in a Charger uniform?
At least
this is the future. Yeah. This is the guy, right?
Yeah.
And I think in my mind, I wanted to be more excited for you guys. Be like, I can't believe you drafted Jordan Addison, right? But I can't believe you took Zay Flowers, a weapon, right? Like you mentioned the Eckler and him pairing like all over the field. But when you hear Quentin John, now listen, he was screaming up boards towards the end, right? Like he was coming into the, and he picked pretty much identical to where they were pegging him as the number 2 receiver potentially in this draft. And I don't know, man, you want it to be, I like the pick. I like the build. I like the stature. I like the skill set. And I love that just pairing more youth with Justin Herbert, where Justin Herbert can just be like, bro, come here.
So I'll tell you how
this is what I need from you.
I'll tell you how I felt about the pick. Relief that the words didn't start with Dalton, right?
Yeah.
So like Dalton Kincaid, I'm relief it wasn't a tight end, right? Relief it wasn't a pick like, if you ever see that Raiders gif of that Raiders fan when he's like, huh? Like when they drafted Clelin Ferrell, like, it was a player that was somewhat slated to be picked around that time frame. So
49er legend Clelin Ferrell, is that what you
mean? And then last but not least, I'm glad I personally thought they had to draft a wide receiver round 1, edge round 2, and that's exactly what they did. So they were very logical.
Yeah.
What about you, man?
Not so much. Now here's how this is me being highly critical, but also like fair to my own team with the 49ers. Obviously we had no activity day 1, sat and waited for a long time day 2, and they started their pick selections doing what I thought they would do this entire time, knowing that they had 11 draft picks. A lot of them were stockpiled for like later rounds, compensatory picks. We already know they have a wave of compensatory picks coming in next year in their latter rounds. I thought this is where you're going to get cute and see them slide 4 or 5 spots up in every round just to hop over to make sure that they get their guy. And you saw it with Jair Brown, the safety out of Penn State. Love the pick. Think this guy is going to compete right out of the gate. Might even have Tashawn Gibson on the sideline, and then you got another young safety duo, where you don't have high draft capital invested into him. And
do you think that moves? I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I've actually this before. But do you think that moves Hufanga closer to line of scrimmage as a linebacker, like in dime packages? Like how do you think that all works out with their safeties? I know that Wilkes likes 3 safeties, but like. Is that the to get Hufanga closer to the line of scrimmage and have Brown play back? You think? I know it's so new.
I think.
Just wanted your opinion.
I mean, I think regardless whether it's Brown, Gibson, or anybody else, I think the intention here is for Wilkes is now. Remember, Wilkes blitzes a little bit more than D'Amico did, than Robert Saleh did. They were all about pressure with 4, pressure with 4, pressure with 4. Wilkes is gonna. he's going to send some folks, right? And I think you move Hufanga to the line. He proved to be pretty competent in pass rush and proved to also be in the back half of the year, have one major brain fart in coverage per game that could happen at an opportune time. So I think so. What's a little perplexing about it is you like if you watch film on Brown, he plays pretty well close to the line of scrimmage as well.
Yeah, he
But he's a
does.
ball hawk. And so is Hufanga, right? Like he's opportunistic. Fine. He's like that we talked about all the time. You know, the Hawaiian guy, USC, long hair. He just reminds you so much. Even his style of play reminds you like Palomalu.
Really aggressive,
Opportunistic, right? Like
aggressive,
instinctual.
instinctual. Yep.
Yep. So I think that's the intention to move him, but you hit the nail right on the head. This is not good. This is going to be 49ers in years past when they were quote unquote sub packages, nickel packages. You saw 3 linebackers out there because they had 3 linebackers that were able to cover running backs and tight ends. You're not going to see that this year. You're going to see 3 safeties. Like that's what you're going to see.
Yeah, I think they're trying to basically build a defense where it's like they can be physical enough to compete in the NFC, but you have to defeat these AFC teams. You're really only having one linebacker on the field. These high flying, teams. So I think like we have to make our defense, multiple, right? You can't just win one style, and I think that's what that Brown pick was.
Yeah. So I love the Brown pick. And then I'm sitting there like, oh my God, we didn't even give up 99 to go to 87. We gave up 102 or 100, I think. 100, whatever it was, 100 or 102. I think it was 102. And it still had 99 and 101. Great. Can't wait to see what we do at 99. And great. It's only 12 picks away. We're going to be there. And then dun, dun, dun. Yeah, kicker out of Michigan, Jake
that hurt.
Moody. It hurt, bro.
You want to know why that hurt too? Here you are, right, Weston? You're watching this. I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. So if I'm out of line, go ahead. But you're watching teams that are major competitors in your conference, the Eagles and the Seahawks, right? Probably now your 2 biggest threats. If you want to dash in a little Lions there, all right, because now you've already seen their game plan for the first 4 picks. This pick had to hurt for that reason. Like, yo, you see what they did? Like, are you kidding me? And you think a kicker is an appropriate selection here? Like, you gotta be out of your mind. I mean, am I wrong thinking that?
No, you're not wrong at all, bro. I can't even tell you how many text messages I got during that pick. I just put my phone down. I just put it because I was like, I can't even look at it because of
gently against the wall.
Yeah, like I was just like, I can't be near this right now. And listen, I know it's my own bias of like, you just don't draft kickers. You know what I mean? Like before the 5th round, you just don't. Okay. Like go look at the history. All of the world's best, right? The Hall of Famers, undrafted or late draft picks. It's that simple. It's that simple, dude. Like you can make 2 arguments. You could say it's a very important position because they are always the team's leading scorer by point accumulation, right? And every point possession ends in a field goal attempt of some variation. So it is important, but you also just got a guy, Zane Gonzalez, that you traded for, that you have here. I'm not saying Zane is fantastic, but like, I don't know. And then it's also the kicker. I don't sit here and tell me that it's like, oh, he's the best kicker in the draft. I don't even know if that's true, right? In my opinion. And oh, by the way, I don't care if he's the best kicker in the draft. That still doesn't mean he's fucking good, right? It just means he's the best kicker in the draft, right? Like it's all relative. And to your point, and we talked about it multiple times throughout this show, your first 3 round picks, right? If you're picking anywhere from 0 to 100, however many times you do it, those got to be guys that start. And yeah, he probably will be the starter. But you know what? Like Dwayne, our buddy Dwayne, right? Like, Dwayne from, big Atlanta fan. He texts me and he's like, here's my favorite snapshot around Jake Moody. He sends me the screenshot. You know what? I'm going to find it. I'm going to read it to you because it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And it summarizes the pick in the craziest way. Let me find Dwayne. Here we go.
I could make an argument in favor of this pick, by the way.
He goes, bro, it's the last line for me. He goes, the 2021 Lou Groza Award winner, Moody owns career Michigan records for points, field goals, and 40-plus yard field goals. He connected on a 59-yard field goal attempt against TCU in the college football playoff semifinals and has enough leg strength to kick off. Like, isn't that a prerequisite? Like, and I know Robbie Gould didn't, even though he was doing our kickoffs. And this was my frustration, constantly seeing teams getting the ball on the 30+ yard line versus like a touchback at the 25, no injuries, no collision, no gas. Like, I like to see that. But dude, he's not even that great plus 50. I've read other articles that are like, if the weather's perfect, he's the best kicker. But if it's windy and blah, 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 I'm like, again, isn't that in the fucking job description? That like if it's sunshine and rainbows, like they probably wanted this kid to kick in a dome, not in fucking Santa Clara in the fall, where weather and rain and mud and slop comes in. I just head scratching. I don't want to be on this too long.
Okay.
Hated the pick. Still hate the pick. I'll hate the pick for the rest of my life, even if he goes into the Hall of Fame. He could kick the game-winning field goal in the Super Bowl. I still will not agree with making this pick, right? Like, I will not go back hindsight on this. Then to top it off, like at 101, the tight end from Alabama. I actually love the position being addressed. We talked about how this is a tight end heavy draft, and there's still players to be had. This is not the guy. He's a project, right? Like, if we later in the draft took Braden Willis out of Oklahoma, who feels like more of a number 2 tight end in the San Francisco offense, a better blocker, doesn't have a ton of physical traits, right? But he's just a better blocker. That's how he's going to get on the field. 6th and 7th offensive lineman, so we can go run the football. If we took Braden Willis at 101 and Cameron Latou at 247, I probably wouldn't have a problem with any of it, just the way that it worked out. So day 2 for me,
you're more upset about the process as opposed to
I'm more upset that who's making the boards, who's making the decision. And here's where it becomes perplexing, because day 3, love everything about day 3. 4 out of our 6 picks on day 3 are plus side characteristics and traits and skill sets and athleticism. So the corner from South Alabama, bigger guy, longer arms, something that they really haven't had since the length of Mosley, who was very long, but Sherm, like the exact build of Sherm, but with speed. Sherm was a very slow man at the cornerback position, but that type of build, haven't had it. The Beal kid, defensive edge out of Georgia, like the pick, man. Like what has this team not had since 2019 is an edge rusher opposite of Bosa. They've been trying to find that forever. This guy garners so much attention. They've done it in spot duty. Do I think Robert Beal Jr. is that guy? Nah, probably not. But he just has to be adequate and rotational. And he's got plus side athletic traits, right? I mean, this is a 4'6", 40 guy, right? Like a bigger guy, a little leaner guy with a little bit of bend to him. Kirby Smart raves about this guy. So we'll see. Kirby knows a little bit about football, considering his team competes for national championships year over year. Favorite pick, D. Winters, by far and away the linebacker from TCU. So you're talking about your TCU guys. You got 3 of them. I got 1 of them. D. Winters is just he just feels like he fits the 49er defense. He feels like Dre Greenlaw Jr. Stature, but he's a 4.4 speed guy, right? Like, and you can turn on tape, bro, and he plugs holes, he fills gaps, flies all over the place. And why I love the pick even more is because what have the 49ers proven that they can do in the past? It's develop linebackers that go on and play and get paid. So if you don't want to pay Greenlaw again, something happens to All-Pro Fred, like you got your guy, and he's an immediate special team contributor. Team contributor who can fly down the field.
I'm going to agree with that real quick. I'm going to trust that if a team like the 49ers is drafting a late round linebacker, then there's probably something to him, because you just hit the nail on the head again when you were saying that they have developed these linebackers in the past, so they know a thing or two when it comes to linebackers.
And they all have the same characteristic. Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, Azeez Al-Shir, now D. Winters, and even the other guy, Jalen Graham, who they picked with the last pick from Purdue, former safeties converted to linebackers who like fly around, just plus side speed, traits, physicality, undersized, right? Like they're not big beans, but they get bodies on the ball and they find the ball carrier real fast.
With bad intentions.
Bad intentions. And then my second favorite pick, Ronnie Bell, wide receiver out of Michigan. something about like, dude, you know where we live. We get a lot of Michigan games on TV, right? So they're constantly televised. I've seen Ronnie Bell play for a couple years now. Productive at a team that I would argue has never really had good quarterback play. Not since Jim Harbaugh's been there have they had plus
You weren't
quarterback play.
you weren't a Drew Henson fan?
No. Yeah, like they just don't, you know what I mean? Like it's been a long time since and when I say I mean Jim Harbaugh, the coach, not the player at Michigan. Because you got the GOAT, Tom Brady, who played there, right? But that being said, like they just haven't had production from the quarterback. And I know Ronnie Bell's not a big guy, but he's got good speed, 4.5 speed, almost a 40-inch vertical leap, and he just feels like he's accountable, productive. Like he just also just feels like he's going to be a 49er, and I think he's going to push to make this roster. Even if they carry 6 wide receivers, I think he has every opportunity. So I take a step back and I say, day one, taking Jair Brown out of the conversation, flush 2 picks down the toilet. Just completely flushed them, in my opinion. Now, we'll see, right? But like, yeah, just pissed money away, in my opinion. Day 3, or our day 2, but day 3 of the draft, really happy. Like we talked about how there's not a lot of holes. If I had to be super nitpicky, I'd be like, okay, where's the offensive line depth? Like, are we really okay with going, in with Colton McKivitz as our right tackle? But here's what I'm talking. Like, day of draft, you hear about Christian McCaffrey being restructured, freeing up like $10 million in cap room. What's the intention behind that if you're not going to go use that? So they still in play for a free agent edge or free agent tackle that's still out there.
Isaiah Wynn. You got some players out there.
Yeah, you've seen it. PFF
actually.
PFF, and I don't like PFF, but like I know we reference them. They've actually said that they've pegged San Francisco as the highest odds and likelihood of landing Isaiah Wynn. Okay, that feels a little bit better, even though
those things are seldom right, though.
They're seldom right. Like, dude, nobody's right in this. Nobody's right. Like nobody. When you think of draft preparation, our generation always thinks of probably Mel Kiper, right? Who's been doing it literally forever. He's in some circles, he's considered the gospel, right? Like he's as close to as good as you can get in an unpredictable facet of the game, which is the NFL draft. And I mentioned it before. He pegged somebody that the 49ers would take at 99 overall. And we landed him as an undrafted free agent 161 picks later, right? Like, or 161 other players came off the board. Now, to me, that's like, oh, a talent evaluator thinks this guy's a top 100 talent, and we got him there. That might be the one undrafted free agent that finds his way to the roster, beyond the practice squad. I don't know. And that's tackle help, but I don't know, man. I feel
like the Niners front office is just trolling its fans right now.
Oh, they love it, dude. They love it. Dude, did you see the whole Kyle thing when they asked him about the pick with Moody, when he was like, oh, all my friends were text messaging me, riding me, about taking a kicker 3 overall, like all of his buddies in the league. And they're like, well, how'd you feel about it? He's like, I would have done the same thing to them. Like he's just, and then making the joke like, hey, at least it wasn't a running back. Like, because he knows the media. It just shows you he pays attention, but he doesn't give a fuck, dude. Doesn't give a fuck. If I walk away from this draft, the legend of Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch's arrogance continues, right? Based on some of these picks. If I had to give it a grade, and I don't like giving grades, especially like this early, got to come back. It's a C. It's a flat C for me. It's just a flat C overall. Draft.
C is average. C is
average. But if you go to private school, that's failing.
Yes.
All right, Lou, that wraps us up, man. We didn't start the show with doing it. I guess we're a little rusty, but just remind everybody where they can find your boys.
You can find us on Instagram and Twitter at WTF Pod NFL, and Weston, as always, with YouTube.
We're Talking Football Podcast at WTF Pod NFL. So I updated the handle to make sure it aligns versus that random generated one that they have. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Sign up for the notifications, engage with us. Lou and I were talking about a pre-show. We're going to start doing more of our content together actually live, so you all can chime in, ask questions, ridicule us, mock us, don't care. I'll throw you up on the board. We'll talk about it and address your questions to help lead conversation, especially since we get closer into the season where it's going to be like hot topic 1, hot topic 2. There's no more big events like the NFL draft or the first wave of free agency.
You know what I call this, Weston? I call this "I'm in the best shape of my life" season. When you get these interviews, you're right here. I'm like, yo, the player I loved last year. He just says he's in the best shape of his life. He's gonna totally come back.
Yeah,
So it's the best
year
shape of your
2.
life
I
season.
totally expect this guy to take the next steps in year 2 or year 3. Like, it's speculation season, man.
Yeah.
It's all it is. But if you're really looking for content, just like join a 49ers group in some capacity because it's enough there for you if you just want to hear about quarterback turmoil when all's said and done. But Lou, always a pleasure getting back on the horn with you. We'll be back in short order. Let's get into the lab. Let's talk a little bit about subject matter topics. And like I said, I think our next show will be live for a studio audience. Appreciate you.